Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. Who would like to add speed to their golf swing and ultimately more distance to their shots? I know I would, and I'm sure you would too. Today's video we're going to tackle the discussion around adding speed and speak about using the ground forces, using a squat and jump technique that you may have seen made popular in recent weeks by some of the best tour players in the world, and show you how that can really help you to create more speed, swing faster, and ultimately hit the ball farther.
Swing. That was a good swing.
So hitting bombs has become the order of the day, particularly on the PGA Tour. And whilst trying to gain distance and gain speed at the expense of the other two fundamentals, contact and curve, is not necessarily the best idea, there is no doubt at all that adding distance to your game can produce a huge advantage. It can really separate golfers of different skill levels. There's no doubt that better players hit the ball further, and you're seeing that on the PGA Tour with some of the stuff that Bryson DeChambeau's doing and other players. There's Francesco Molinari recently did this squat and jump drill, which I'm going to sort of discuss with you a little bit today. What it does, how it helps, the things that are happening within that drill, try and help you to identify those moves, and share with you a couple of drills to help you to improve the squat, the jump, and the power. So let's just isolate and identify what I'm talking about regarding the squat and jump. It's really a discussion about how in the downswing golfers look like, and they certainly do, lower themselves down towards the ground before pushing up and jumping, if you like, back up away from the ground on the follow through. That's a really powerful move that, if done properly, can absolutely add plenty of speed to your swing. And using the GOLFTEC motion measurement here, we are going to talk today about the specific body motion that happens in order to achieve that. And as I've already said, a couple of drills that you can do to enhance your ability to do this. So when it comes to understanding this movement within the context of the golf swing, it's really about the flexion and extension of the body throughout the swing. GOLFTEC, we measure that, we call that shoulder bend, and a forward shoulder bend. If you look at the sensors on the screen there, the forward shoulder bend with the shoulders, which is sitting on top of my spine here, and the hip sensor, which is sitting at the base of my spine here, they're both reading in forward bend or forward flexion. You could think about that as where my chest would be pointing forward or down to the ground. 0 would be more or less me standing up straight. This would be 0, okay, with my shoulders at least. And then if I actually moved into a backward bend or an extension, that shoulder bend number would turn into a, rather than an F, it would read B, which would be backwards. So forwards and backwards. And the squat and jump principle is going to utilize that flexion extension, or that up and down. When we begin the golf swing, we start in forward bend. That's pretty obvious, I hope. Everyone can see that I'm bent forwards. The sensors are reading as such. And once I get up to the top of the swing, now both of those sensors are reading more or less 0, which means as I've done my backswing, I've gone from forward bend to straight up and down. I've actually stood up or lost this angle in my spine. Now the reason I haven't raised up away from the ground is because at the same time as I've extended, I've also tilted to the left. Something many of you should be familiar with by now if you've been watching lots of my videos. You'll know that the extension and the turn and tilt work together to help keep my head very centered. But you'll see that at the top of the swing at this point, I'm now extended or in basically 0 forward bend or backward bend. If I wanted to make my swing longer, I could do that by bending backwards more. And as I started down from here, this is where the squat principle starts to take effect. I'm going to move down back towards the ground, and until such time as the club reaches parallel to the ground, you'll see that my forward bend numbers there have returned somewhat towards where they were at setup. So I started around 50 degrees forward bend with my shoulders, 15 degrees with my hips. I've extended up and out of those numbers to the top of the swing. And as I move back down to P6 and stop, those forward bend numbers are reproduced. They're similar to where I was at impact. And that's the squat part, that's the moving down part again. And from here, I should already be starting to push up with my legs, my feet, my legs, my hips, so that as I'm hitting the ball, I'm beginning to move into a backward bend. So this is the jump. So I've gone from a position where my handle is at its lowest, my belt buckle is down on the most, my hands are closest to the ground, and from P6, that's all going to start to go up. And the up starts to come from the legs straightening, the belt buckle and the chest going from a pointing down condition. We can see that in the forward bend there. And by the time the club reaches parallel with the ground on the follow through, those are both going to be into a backward bend. So now my chest is pointing up and my belt buckle is pointing up. As I've already said, this up and down motion isn't always that easy to see in a golf swing because you don't actually see me standing up and raising away from the ground. I've already touched on briefly why that is, but if you think about the up and down in just this single plane of motion, it's very much like someone trying to chop wood. My good friend Andy Plummer taught me this analogy and it really helped me to understand this piece of the swing. So a lot of the vertical force, which is the up and down piece, is coming from the extension as if I was raising an axe above my head to chop wood, and then the flexion coming down towards the ground again to strike the wood and split it. If I wanted to split the wood in the fewest strikes, I would extend the most on the backswing or the upswing and then strike down very aggressively on the downward strike. So if you want to hit the ball further, the first thing you've got to learn to do is to extend more in the backswing. So as I'm swinging back, lengthening my backswing through extending my spine and bending backwards slightly towards the target. That's going to lengthen my swing and allow me for a greater squat, which then can help me to produce a faster, more powerful jump. So let's show you a couple of ways you can start to introduce this to your technique. The first thing I would suggest that you do when you're swinging back is to feel like you really lengthen or stretch out your spine and almost feel like it bends backwards slightly towards the target. I'm not advocating leaning to the left like this. I'm suggesting a centered turn with greater extension at the top of the swing to lengthen out the swing to its furthest point. Once you've done that, the real trick is to start to move back down into flexion quickly. And this split-handed drill that I'm doing here with the driver can really help you to do that. So what I've done here is I've taken my driver, I've split my hands, I can swing up. And what I want you to do is to swing down to P6, which is shaft parallel to the ground. I want you to swing down as fast as possible and stop the club in this position here. So you're going to go up, down, and stop. You do that fast, so much so that you may have noticed there the shaft was just wobbling as I put the brakes on. Learning to go up, down, and put the brakes on and stop really starts to train the sequencing of this move and for the lower body to really respond correctly. So we're going to go up and extend. I've got 0 degrees basically of shoulder bend and hip bend at this point. Now I'm going to come down to P6 and stop, where I've now got nearly 60 degrees of forward bend, 14 degrees of forward bend with my hips. So I'm extending and squatting, extending and squatting. As I do that, I can feel the physical effort that I'm having to put into that. So it's actually going to start training your body, your muscles, not just in your hands and arms, but through your torso, through your legs, to really start to support that movement. So that would be the first thing to do, and you'll notice in the clip that you'll see with Francesco Molinari how he describes him doing something very, very similar, going back into flexion on the downswing and stopping before he then jumps up and hits the ball. Now I'm going to share with you the follow-through part or the jump part of this drill, and then we'll put them together. So to learn the second part of this movement, the jump and the upward move or the extension in the follow-through, which is the straightening of the legs, the extending of the pelvis and the spine, to learn that movement, I've substituted my golf club right now for an alignment stick. What you're going to do is you're going to set up and place that alignment stick back on the ground, so it's way behind where the ball would be. And I'm moving down into what feels like that P6 position, okay, into that P6 shaft parallel, where I'm the most flexed with my knees, my pelvis is flexed, and I'm the closest to the ground with my hands, and my entire body at that point is as close to the ground as it's going to get. I'm just going to rest the club onto the ground at that point, and now I'm going to swing from here, where you can see I'm 55, 56 degrees flexed forward with my shoulders, 17, 18 degrees flexed forward with my hips. I'm going to swing from here into the follow through, dragging this club along the ground and dragging this stick along the ground. So the only way I can get this club up and away from the ground is by straightening my legs and extending my body. So I'm going to go up, push, 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 to a point where my chest is now very much pointing up to the sky. You're going to learn to do that, and you'll start to do it faster. So from here, the pushing up is from the ground. Push your legs, push through the ground, straighten your legs, keep your arms straight. Finish with your chest up, facing the target, and even more than that, facing the sky. And just a quick addition to the down or the squat piece, if you find it too difficult to do with a golf club because it's a bit too heavy for you to support that movement, go ahead and do it with a tour stick. Go ahead and grab this as your initial club. You go up to the top, you can do the down bit. It's a lot easier to swing this fast and stop it because it's a lot lighter. But if you need that little bit of help in the beginning as you learn to do this movement, I'd very much encourage you to go back to an alignment stick and substitute your golf club for an alignment stick, so you can actually do this drill correctly with efficiency, so that it actually has some benefit to your game. So now we've got all of the pieces. We've got the up or the extension on the backswing, we've got the down or the squat on the downswing, and as the club's reaching this shaft parallel position, you should already be beginning to think about pushing up for the jump part on the follow through. So once you've got those pieces individually, let's start blending them together, which is going to be a down and an up, a down and an up, down, up. And as you do that, you'd want to start to feel more speed being thrown out towards the club, thrown out towards the end of the stick. It's exactly how it feels when I'm doing it there. You should be able to notice that you're using the ground differently, able to create more club head speed, which ultimately we want to turn into more distance. So that's the way this works. That's the drill and the understanding of the up, the down, and then the up again. Putting these pieces together and actually hitting a golf ball can potentially seem quite challenging. And a lot of time I battle with players who want to add distance but are frightened to push the boundaries towards what this drill enables them to do. The very common response is, well, that feels like I'm starting to lose control. And of course, as I said at the beginning of this video, adding distance or adding speed to your swing, but compromising the quality of the contact and the direction or the dispersion of your golf ball isn't a great idea. But with so many of you locked up and unable to play golf right now, but you are able to do indoor training and dry drills, this is a great time for you to be practicing these movements and incorporating them into your swing. If you are lucky enough to be able to hit shots, I'm going to suggest that you go out there and try some of these drills, similar to how Molinari does his drill in the video I shared at the beginning of this video. I'll also link that in the description so you can go and check that out. So we're going to go up to the top. We're going to squat, so come down and almost pause, then a little recoil and hit. So extend or up, down and hit. That's how we're going to work. That's what we're going to do as best we can to develop that transition from the drill into something that incorporates hitting balls. Ultimately, if you're able to measure your swing speed, I'd start by measuring it as a baseline right now, and then work on increasing that over a period of the next few weeks or months by a few miles an hour, and using that drill and that training to help you swing faster and hit the ball further. Okay, so we've hit a shot on the mat there. I've shown you the drill. I just want to show it to you on the screen in slow motion using the GOLFTEC motion measurement. Set up here, I'm going to pull some of these out onto the screen. So my hip bend and my shoulder bend at this point. very much forward, as we discussed. Then if we jump to the top of the swing, we've got the shoulder bend 1 degree back, and at that point my hip sensor is 3 degrees forward. So effectively they're both neutral, or more or less come out of that forward bend position. As we move into the downswing, you'll begin to notice some of that squatting as my head does start to drop. I'm also going to mark my belt line here because both of those things, as I start the downswing, both start to drop. So that's the point where I'm getting towards the most flexed with my hips, P5, more or less P5, where my left arm is parallel to the ground. You'll notice my shoulder bend continues to go down until we get just shy of P6, 54, 53 degrees forwards, and then by the time the shaft's reaching P6, I'm around 50 degrees. So I'm beginning to extend, and that's a good thing. At this point, you'd already want to be pushing back up away from the ground. As we move into the follow through, one of the most important things here would be to note how continuing to bend backwards or extend through the ball is universally demonstrated by the game's best players. This picture came to light this week from the tournament at Riviera. My good friend Steve Holmes, who's a stack and tilt instructor in Los Angeles, took this picture, posted it, or made this picture, posted it on Instagram. I asked him if I could steal it, and he was very kind to say that I could. Notice how these players, as they've moved through the ball, are all extended. Legs, pelvis, spine. They're extending up and away from the ground. This is the jump part of our move that we're discussing today. And it's really clear to see that this is a universal move demonstrated by the game's best players. If you have a look at the screen, I'll show you how the GOLFTEC motion measurement system has developed and studied how golfers move through the ball. So the shoulder bend number here that you see at the end of the swing is the best players move into a shoulder bend around 30 degrees backwards, whereas the poorest players stay in shoulder bend that's far less back than that, and many of them in a forward bend, which would just not be very functional at all. Particularly from a speed point of view. If you wanted to swing as slow as possible, you'd swing with your chest and your pelvis still pointing down to the ground at the end of the swing. If you wanted to swing faster, you'd swing and move into the follow through, where at the end of the swing, your shoulders and your hips are bent back. So if you look at my final position there with my shoulders at the end of the swing, I've moved into 37 degrees of backward bend. Another favourite of mine, another favourite swing of mine to watch, which also demonstrates this beautifully, is one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world, Rory Mcilroy. Rory there, swinging up. I'm going to highlight the down part, which is also going to be his head and on his belt line, how that lowers significantly down towards P6, and then his belt is really pushing those legs up. So by the time he hits the ball, his legs are straightening, his chest is undoubtedly pointing up towards the ground, as is his belt buckle. That's that jump and that extension I was talking about. Rory does it as well as anybody really in the world. It's one of the reasons he's a great driver of the golf ball. It's one of the reasons he's such a long hitter. And I'd love to be able to do it half as well as he does. But if you're looking to add speed to your game, give this squat and jump drill a try. Try and incorporate it into your swing, and let's see if you can add some distance to your game. Guys, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure you do give us a subscribe, click that like button, and feel free to ask questions down in the comments section. It's always good to hear from you. Until next time, do take care, stay safe, have a great week, and I'll see you again next week for another video.